What is going on, everybody? This is Zach, and I'm back with another episode of Man to Mike, and I'm sitting here with Jess Hawkins. No relation, but I feel like we've got a lot in common, and so we're going to sit here and talk about it, and I'm pretty excited about having you. Known Jesse just through recovery and pretty much the recovery community, but we've never physically met until just now. Like, we've talked a couple of times over the years through social media and on the phone and stuff, but first time actually meeting in person, so I'm excited to sit here with you and kick it and just kind of know a little bit more about you and what you got going on in life. So just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, man. My name is Jess Hawkins, and I'm 39 years old. I'm in recovery from drug addiction.
Yeah.
Turned car salesman among, father.
Hell of a car salesman too, man. So I'm sure you're a great dad also, but I see you on social media and stuff all the time with the car sales, man. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. The beautiful thing about being in recovery and also being in car sales is that a lot of people need some help to rebuilding their credit, their life. They're starting over in their addiction. They had a lot of stuff happen to them. So that's a beautiful thing about my job. When you see someone that's pretty much starting over, didn't have a license for 12 years, whatever, got it back. They get this car to get them going. Cool, they build their credit back up. They come back a year and a half later because the older car they had to start out with is falling apart, and now it's time to upgrade, and now their credit, they're getting to where they can buy a house or anything. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So kind of where we were, too. Like, I got myself into such a mess, man. Like, from the day I turned 18, I maxed out a credit card. My credit's been trash ever since, right? And then addiction didn't help at all. And then so, like, in my mid-30s, I'm trying to be responsible, trying to build my credit and stuff. But when I first got sober, man, like, I had gotten a DUI there at some point, and so I think once I had my DUI, I still had like another 18 months of running in me, and so then when I got sober, man, it took me like 4 years, I think. It was 4 total years of not having a license. I think the first 2 years I was sober,
right?
And so, like, yeah, it was a crazy thing, and at the time we never did get to the spot to go just finance a car. It took us a long time to be able to go finance a car, but it was the same thing, building credit so we could do that, so we could get a house and all that other stuff, and then, in my divorce, my credit kind of got trashed a little bit more, and so just trying to rebuild that now so we can hopefully do it again. We're renting this house,
And I totally relate that. I'm no expert, or I wasn't an expert on it, and I've done it the same thing to mine, but nobody ever told me, growing up and like all this stuff about credit and how you got to have it. Yeah. My dad was kind of like, got to pay cash, kind of like the Dave Ramsey thing. I didn't know about credit and that a bank's not just going to give you money if they don't know who you are. You can't be trusted. Yeah. Like, you got to start somewhere.
For sure. And that was with my dad, man. Like, my dad was really, really good with money. Like, probably the best person that I know with money. Very greedy, very tight with his money. Very meticulous, probably the highest credit score you could probably get also. Right. He keeps just enough credit to make sure it's immaculate all the time. But he never taught me how to manage money. He always would say, you need to do this, this, and this, but never explain it, never explain credit, never explain any of it. It was just like, you're doing it wrong and you got to do this. Well, why? Like, I was never taught why. I was just told I was doing it wrong, and so... Yeah, trying to figure that out now, as an adult. Like, I really wish I would have had a little more guidance on that. Gentlemen, teach your kids about finances.
For real.
They need it. So I'm terrible with that. I'm trying to get better. It is something I'm trying to, like, start educating. Of course, ours are just starting to kind of come up to those ages where money is a thing and we can start, talking about that more. I do have one that just turned 16, and he's been pretty responsible. He's definitely not me. I'm so grateful. Yeah. He's got a pretty good head on his shoulders, all things considering. So, for me being his dad, he's done pretty well, I'd suppose,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, with my 2 kids, I've got a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl, and my son is just like me, good and bad.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to teach him the things that I wish somebody would have taught me.
For sure.
Because I know how his mind's working and I know where it's going on a lot of different stuff. And I'm like, I've got to show him so he don't make the mistakes that I made with a lot of different areas and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's weird as not just being a parent, but being a parent that has spent time in addiction and spent time just out in the world living such a rough life, and then trying to be on the flip side of that, of being sober and trying to give your kids all of the greatest things. So it's not just like, and I'm not discrediting any father out there. I'm just saying when you're a father that's been through addiction and you've seen the rough stuff, it makes you so much more when you're in recovery want to give those things to your kids that you never had. Like, not the possession things, not any, like, you want to give your kids the things that you didn't have,
Sure.
that you craved, that you needed, man.
Yeah.
And it's a cool thing, it's an interesting thing, and it's a very difficult thing too, because I feel like with that brings a lot of shame and a lot of guilt because of all the things that we've done in the past. And that shame and guilt kind of stacks up when I'm sitting there trying to deal with my kids, I guess, sometimes in some sort of way. Like my oldest son, I missed, a lot of the first 4 years of his life because of addiction. And then ever since then, it's kind of been every other weekend with him, his whole life. And so me and him have never been crazy close. And I carry a lot of guilt with that.
Yeah.
Constantly, especially now that he's getting older and these new realizations are starting to pop up where it's like, he doesn't just have a car now. He got a car in August. Now he started a job. Well, he's already pretty active in band, and I already don't see him a lot anymore anyway, because on the weekends there's band competitions and stuff like that. And then, now he's working a job, and now I'm seeing him maybe even less.
Right.
And so now I'm currently going through this phase where I'm dealing with a lot of guilt right now.
Sure.
Because I'm realizing that, it's mostly passed by. And
Right.
he's becoming a man, and he's moving on. He's doing his own thing. And I don't feel like I've been able to invest in him like I've wanted to and needed to. And then also, I don't know how to. I didn't have a father that showed me that. My dad was just a workaholic. You work, this is what you do. You work and you come home, and that was it. But he was a workaholic. And so, I never had him just there to teach me and show me and just kind of do things with me. I had a stepdad that did that. And
Right.
a stepdad was very present, and I was very fortunate for that. But yeah, man, raising kids is difficult.
For sure. It's different now than when we were growing up.
For sure. Well, I don't know. So tell me a little bit about growing up.
Okay. So I'm from East Tennessee. I was actually born in Maryville. We moved around a little bit when I was early on.
Mm-hmm.
Did kindergarten, was in Maryville. My father, he was actually assistant district attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another kind of funny part of my story with some of the life choices that I ended up making later on in life. But anyway, growing up, he was assistant district attorney. My parents were still together at the time. We moved to Athens, Tennessee for a year when I was in first grade. And then Dad was commuting back and forth. He got a job actually in Sevierville, and that's where he was at until he retired. He did 42 years for the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
So something I've always respected, super impressive. I've always been proud of my dad. He always showed up and stuff like that. But growing up, I would say I had what I would call a normal childhood. My parents, they were together until I was 12, and then they divorced, which that kind of, blindsided me a little bit.
Oh, yeah, and at 12, dude, because I went through a divorce at 13, man, and I think that it has a lot to do with a lot of things that I still deal with today. I think it was just the age that it happened.
Yeah. The age that it happened, it was kind of like, I knew they argued and stuff like that, but I just always thought that my parents would be together forever. I was very active in sports. I made all A's and B's in school.
Yeah.
So I guess my story is a little bit different than other people because my childhood was actually really good, minus, my parents getting divorced, but there was a lot of other kids that had a whole lot worse than me. And it was upper middle class, growing up, lived in the neighborhood, played with kids, excelled in sports. I was always afraid to get in trouble and stuff like that. My dad was kind of strict on me a little bit. So I didn't experience a lot of the things that some kids did growing up as early as they did. But I remember in high school, I was playing 3 different sports, and I was a junior in high school, and I went to my first party. Mm-hmm. And I've been wanting to go to parties for a while, but I just never really got to. And I remember that I was drinking my first beer with freshmen on the soccer team, and I was a junior.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, I'm starting late. You know,
Yeah.
I remember, but when I had that first sip of alcohol, looking back on it now, I finally felt a part of, and I felt like I fit in with a group of people that I played sports with, but I was kind of like the one that didn't do the stuff they were doing. I wanted to party. They were getting to party. So, you know, from that first sip, man, I kind of felt like, dang, this is what I've been missing my whole entire life. I felt good, man. I got that confidence.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to do it again.
Yeah. Alcohol's good at that too, man.
Yeah.
Alcohol's good at making us feel like we're something that we're not. It gives us that confidence for sure.
Sure. So I started dating a girl, my first love, and I had found out that she had smoked a joint, and I remember it upset me because, you know, like I said, my dad being with what he did too, like I was taught drugs are bad, it's illegal.
Yeah.
I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I knew that she kept lying to me about it, and eventually I was like, you know what, I want to try that.
Yeah.
So I think fast forward, you know, senior year of high school, and she was a little bit younger than me, but she was wild and wanted to impress her, wanted to see what it was all about. She's like, you know, you can't knock it till you try it. So I remember I started smoking a couple times with her, and I really, really liked it. You know, I really enjoyed it. I felt comfortable in my own skin. You know, I felt like I never fit in before that in a way.
So is that something that you've always struggled with, is not feeling like you fit in anywhere?
Yeah.
Bro, that's always been like such a big struggle for me. Even to this day, man, it's so hard. Yeah, so I get that.
Yeah, it's like I felt like I didn't fit in. It's like I was popular in high school and stuff like that, but I don't know. I felt like there was always a group of kids that were more popular. I just didn't feel like I really fit in at all. Like I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. You know, I still have anxiety, you know, and stuff like that now, but I know that I for sure had it when I was a kid. I felt like I wasn't as fit as the other players on the soccer team. You know, like all these things of my own thinking is kind of what got me there. So
so is anxiety itself something you always struggle with, or is it something was there something going on that made you anxious?
I think I've just always struggled with anxiety. Okay. But, you know, I'm 39, so growing up, I look back on it now, and I'm like, I had a lot of mental health stuff going on.
Yeah.
Like ADHD, anxiety, all these little things that I didn't know were really a thing. So, you know, maybe I started using to cope with that.
For sure.
In a sense, but I graduated high school with honors and all that stuff, and I ended up going to the University of Tennessee because that's, you know, the thing what you're supposed to do when you get out of high school is go to college, what I've been taught. I made great grades in high school, and granted, I'm smoking on the regular basis. I'm drinking on the weekends when I can. No trouble. My family doesn't even know about it. You know, I'm hiding it from them. And I remember I went to UT to live in the dorms, and this was my first time.
Terrible place.
Out of the house, man. Yeah. Like where my parents couldn't say, "Oh, you got to get your friend to call where you're staying at. Make sure it's okay with their parents." That's why I didn't go to a lot of parties and stuff, because my parents checked up on me.
Yeah,
they wanted to know where I was at. So when I went to UT, I remember that I was like, wow, they can't tell me what to do for one thing, but I immediately got connected with everybody that was partying.
Yeah.
Because I loved it. That's what I wanted to do. I started drinking all the time. I started selling pot along with, you know, smoking all day, which come to missing class and not waking up.
It's just a spiral.
You know, make good grades in half your classes, fail the other ones because you can't wake up, because you picked an early morning class. I remember you're supposed to have, like, the end of the semester meeting with an advisor, which I didn't even know about because that's how much my mind wasn't in it. First semester, come out, 1.08 GPA.
Shoot, yeah.
And stayed for another semester and basically did the exact same thing the second semester. But what I did learn was a lot about drugs, and I became a pot dealer. And I finally felt like I fit in a way because now people wanted me.
Yeah.
And so when I grew up in Sevier County, you know, I remember when we started smoking, it was like this really crappy, you know, weed that was, you know, the Mexican stuff had the seeds in it and stuff like that. Well, I'm at college now. I'm getting the good stuff. So people wanted me.
Yeah.
Because back in that day, you couldn't find good stuff everywhere except you were at a college campus. So all these people, the group I talked about that was the more popular kids in school, they're all coming to me now.
Yeah.
So I felt a false sense of I'm a badass because everyone wanted me, but they really just wanted what I had.
Yeah.
So I got into a lot of stuff when I was in college. Like I said, I failed out, moved back to Sevierville. But at this point, you know, I'm pushing weed, and I did that for 5 years, but I was never that smart at it when it come to like stacking a bunch of money and like trying to do all this stuff. I did it strictly just to party with.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a little bartending job, and I sold weed, and I would do.
You were living the teenage college dream,
you know, cocaine, ecstasy, Xanax, mushroom, whatever.
Yeah.
I was a partier. But I didn't understand about addiction at all. I didn't know about you can get addicted to this. Like I saw certain people that, you know, crackheads on the street or whatever, and you're like, well, that can't ever be me because I'm not addicted to one thing.
Yeah.
I like a lot of stuff, and I don't have to have any of it.
I feel like it's definitely different. The time that me and you grew up in, the stigma behind addiction is much different than it is today. Where today, I feel like a lot of people understand that it could be anybody. And back then, unless those people had those telltale signs and were living on the street, that's what you envision addiction was. Like somebody that was just, and it's not that, you know, but like we just come from a culture where it just, you know, oxys were around and stuff, but addiction still not being crazy talked about, like when you're in college, when I'm in high school, stuff like that. It's not, you know, but now the culture's just so different, man. It's just so crazy.
It is.
Do you think that just maybe one thing that maybe escalated in college was just going from that strict environment to having, just realizing you have freedom, and it almost becomes a rebellion because you don't have to be strict. You can't tell me what to do.
Absolutely.
See, I went through a very, very similar situation. Mine was just in high school instead of college. But I bouncy balled, bro. Where was I going with that?
In college was the last thing you said.
Yeah. Well, what was it? Oh, man, I forgot. I totally blanked.
No, you're good, man.
I'll come
We're talking
back
about
to this.
addiction and stuff, and it's a little bit different than when we were growing up, and we didn't talk about it. It's kind of frowned upon.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's where I was going with it. So when I was 16, and I've talked about this a couple of times, but when I was 16, DCS came and took me and my brother and sister out of my dad's house. And I went to go live with my mom, and they went into foster care for a little bit. My little brother stayed in foster care. He was an adopted brother anyway. And so they kind of let him just stay in foster care. And then my little sister ended up going back to my dad at some point. But I went to my mom's house. My dad was like drill sergeant strict. I mean, like, so my dad's the project manager of the federal buildings downtown. So he's up there rubbing elbows. He's been up there for 20-something years.
Yeah.
So like loves to name drop, loves to tell you who he knows and all that stuff. And, you know, I could care less who anybody knows probably because of that. If somebody name drops to me, I'm like, I could give it down.
Right.
You know, just because of that, I think. But anyway, so from where he was so strict, man, I couldn't do anything. I was not allowed to have friends. I wasn't allowed, not unless they lived like in the direct neighborhood close by, like, and he knew their parents. He knew everything about them. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't do background checks, just to be honest, like hindsight.
Yeah.
And, but it was just so strict, man. Like I couldn't even feel like I could go into my kitchen and just like get food or a drink. I don't remember ever just doing that because I felt like there was very strict times where we ate and like, no, don't you get in my fridge.
Yeah.
You know? And so, and then like everything was immaculate because he's very OCD. So the white walls, white carpet, everything's white, no shoes in the house. Every Saturday morning, he's up with a little paint bucket and a little paintbrush looking for any white, like nick in the wall that he can touch up. Like, it's like that.
Yeah.
And then I go to my mom's house. And my mom had lived with my dad. They were married for 5 years. And so she knew what that was like. And so when I came to her, she wanted to give me freedom to do things and to have friends.
Not walking on eggshells anymore.
Yes. The problem was my rebellious nature, you know, and as soon as I had freedom, I was off to the races. And like I said, Mom, when they were doing their best, you know, I was the oldest kid. You make mistakes. But it's just like, I don't know. My rebellion, there was nothing. I was uncontrollable at that point. Once I realized I tasted freedom, that was it, dude. And so the first chance I had to get to move out of Mom's house. The day I turned 18, my stepdad walked in and he said, "Happy birthday." And I'm packing a bag. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm leaving." He said, "Don't come back." I said,
Dang.
"Okay." And
that's funny.
You know, but it
you
was
were ready to go.
Me. I was.
Oh, yeah.
Dude. I was. And so, I don't know. I didn't have a plan, but I figured it out.
And I don't know if you're like me, but I know that if you get your mind made up for something, there's no stopping it.
No. The Lord himself would have to sit down and probably tell me no. And I'm still going to probably try to resist that.
Yeah. And that's how I was too. Yeah. There wasn't really anyone telling me anything. And the only thing I really knew about addiction was my mom, my mom's side of the family. And that's part of my story too. Mom passed away in 2017. I'll probably get to that here in just a minute. But my mom, her side of the family, 8 brothers and sisters, were all pretty much every single one of them was an addict. So when my mom met my dad, and they didn't have kids, I had a half brother and sister from my mom, but my dad wanted a kid. They were a little bit older to have me. They were 36. They were like, sheltered me in a way, because Mom's like, I don't want, you know, that side of the family. You know, they're showing up with the Budweiser in their cup holder and the roach in their ashtray and like no license and, you know, all that stuff showing up to the Thanksgiving deal. And they wanted me away from them. And they kept me away from them, but I didn't realize the genetics of addiction at the time.
God, I'm glad you brought that up.
Because it's real.
So real.
And it's real. And, you know, my dad's side of the family, there's some addiction on the grandfather's side on some areas, but nothing like my mom's side of the family, who she was one of 9 kids, whose mom died when she was 8, and they got split up to all these relatives in Granger County. They had to work in fields and, you know, all this stuff. So she was around drugs from an early age. She chose not to do it. But I didn't realize, you know, that side of the family and all that stuff. So I remember when I was at college and I'm experimenting with all this stuff before I got kicked out. I wasn't even coming home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, maybe for Christmas Day, you know, moved back to Sevierville. In the next several years, I went to college in 03 to 04. And then from, let's just say, 2005 to 2009, like I said, I sold weed. I was partying a lot. In 2005, I got into a lot of ecstasy on the weekends, and
I was more like it was more like 2010 when I was really hit. 2009, 2010 when I was really hitting the ecstasy hard.
Yeah, man, those were some crazy times too. But like, it still didn't feel that bad because it was like a party scene, and everyone was just kind of having fun. I related to being somewhat of a hippie and kind of went to festivals, and I love live music, you know, trips. And I had money to do that because I was dealing. So I'd go on vacations. I lived a lot of great experiences. Never had any consequences so far to addiction. And it just kind of went from there, and I just kept doing it. Around 08 or 09, I was bartending in Pigeon Forge at the Smoky Mountain Brewery. And I had tried some pills and stuff like that before, but never anything long term. I tried a few different things, but I had a back injury from a few years before, and I started taking some hydrocodone. And I would get them from some people I worked with, you know, and I would take, you know, 30 milligrams a day of hydrocodone, a couple tins to get me. And I told myself and justified that, hey, I have a back problem. I quit drinking. I wasn't really partying with all the party drugs anymore. And I said, this is actually a good thing because the doctor would prescribe these to me if I went to the doctor, all this stuff. So I remember, it escalated into taking these by mouth to dabbling with a Roxy 30 here and there. And I'd snort it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Nobody wants to snort a hydro. Who has time for that much powder?
I ain't doing that. But I have done it.
Oh, I have.
But yeah, like you're saying, you got all that extra Tylenol and stuff in it. But anyways, I don't understand still about getting dependent on something. I never had heard of dope sick or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I kept kind of just going up the cycle of pills to where there was a point where I couldn't get anything other than Oxycontin.
And why would you want to?
Right.
I mean, really?
Exactly. And for a while, I didn't want to because that was the one drug that at that time, everyone was just like, oh, no, that's the devil. That's the, whatever. But I would try to get a Roxy, like that's so much better. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm like, this is better. But it got to a point where that's all I could get. And I went through the cycles of snorting them till eventually, and piggybacking off what you talked about in one of the other episodes, where I was against needles, but eventually it got to the point, and it was presented to me that, these Oxycontin 80s are so expensive that if you shoot it, you can do about half of it and feel the same. And that's kind of a lie because it's kind of like one time you might, and it might feel better, but...
Yeah. For the most part, it just changes the high. It becomes a different addiction. And then you have two addictions. You have a physical addiction, and then you have just that mental addiction of the needle. Like, because I remember shooting dope with water just to make myself feel better, I mean, I think a lot of us have, man. And it's how mental the whole aspect of addiction is, man. Just seeing the blood go into a syringe in my mind, knowing it was just water, I don't know. I still have an access point,
No,
there's a comfort there.
Completely agree with that. And I remember, the first time I did it, I actually had a guy that was a nurse show me the correct way to do it. He was an addict. He didn't shoot up at the time, but obviously as a nurse, he knew how to do it good. And he showed me how to do it the safe way, if there is one, and the proper way, to do it and get air bubbles out and the whole 9 yards. And I remember it changed the level of the people I hung around, people I wanted to be around, and
it becomes more questionable.
I didn't want to be around I wasn't partying anymore. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a party drug anymore. I was only around people that either had what I wanted, did what I wanted, or could get what I wanted, or had money to get what I want. And that's how I remember the first time I tried to quit Oxycontin. I'll backtrack just a little bit. This is before I started shooting up. And it was 3 years into 80 to 200 milligrams a day of snorting it, and I tried to quit, and I couldn't. 4 or 5 days, and I went and got stuff, and then it escalated into the needles and stuff like that, and I landed myself in my very first detox center in 2009.
How old were you?
2009, 24 years old.
Yeah.
So I landed in a detox because my family was like, they're on my ass. You got to get clean. They know that I'm using needles. At this point, they had found out. And I went to a detox center. And I remember I was there for 4 or 5 days, and I got out. Immediately used the next day. I never really had any intentions of quitting, and it definitely wasn't
just
long
a fresh
enough.
Start,
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't really know. I didn't, I was like, okay, this is it, and I was trying to go to meetings and stuff, and then I would get, pills in between, and then I just stopped going again. So, but the first big, kind of event that planted the seed to get me, towards living a clean life, or chance that thought I could live a clean life. I remember I was so bad off in 2010. and I had a prescription of OCs and a few of some Xanaxes and a few other things. And at this point, my addiction, I'm doing like 12 to 1,500 milligrams a day of OxyContin. I've got a prescription to them. I'm trying to sell them. I'm also shooting.
Was you running to Florida?
I had some. I did do a couple runs,
people?
but I had a pain clinic up here.
Oh, I got you.
Because remember, I said I hurt my back. I went and did what us addicts do. I went and got my MRI, and they're like, "Hey, you got a herniated disc." So I immediately, 24 years old, got in a pain clinic. And
was it Brick House?
It was actually, yeah. Breakthrough.
Yeah, we know about Brick House.
Breakthrough. We can say that because they're not a thing no more. But yeah, they had me. I was on 120 Roxy 30s a month. I was on 3 OxyContin 60s a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dr. Brickhouse.
Yeah, it was just the same as going down to like Power Line Drive in Boca Raton. You know, you go down there and they're going to write you a fat script of everything.
Yeah,
and then the whole way up I-95 on your way back home, there's just like these road signs that say "Pillbillies go home" or "Good luck." Especially when you get to Thunder Road right there through Georgia, they had them signs that say "Good luck."
I'll never forget. Me and my buddy, I talked him in. I said, "Let's go to West Palm Beach." We just drove like it was nothing to West Palm Beach. And I had the MRI, he had some money to kind of put up the sponsor. Cause like I said, I'm a junkie, I'm in Florida. You look a little suspicious wearing hoodies.
Oh yeah.
And even though it was February down there, you still look suspicious wearing hoodies. And I'll never forget the pain clinic actually busted me with track marks and wouldn't give me what I wanted. And they prescribed me a bunch of Percocets and Ativan, and I was pissed, bro.
Who wants that?
So mad. So I was trying to find them down there and everything. But that's what really, that last day of using in 2010, I remember my dad is like, "I'll send you to this treatment. It's long-term. It's in Louisiana." And at first I was like, I don't know. But I remember sitting there, and I almost OD'd on Coke. I did a shot. And I remember having to do so many OC60s. My shirt was just stained red from all the coating taken off because 60s, I was about to OD on this Coke. I was shaking. I was nervous. And I'm like, I'm going to end up dying. So I called.
Speedballing was the better option.
Yeah, well, I thought it might bring me down a little bit, from being up too much. But that was just how my life was, man. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, man, I'm going to end up dying. So I decided to go to treatment. And I went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I ended up staying down there for 4.5 months. But that's where I learned about the things that they teach us in order to stay clean, but more importantly, I learned a little bit more about myself, along the way. And 4.5 months, man, that was the first time. I was actually their longest detox patient they'd ever had there, because they did it based on, how you were getting over it and stuff. And my addiction was so bad, they kept me in detox for 16 days.
Oh, yeah, that is a long time.
And I ended up staying down there for 4.5 months, got homesick, Greyhound bus back, and I was like, I've got this now, and showed back up at my mom's. Everyone was mad that I came home because I was supposed to stay 9 months. And my addiction started all over again right when I got back. And I'd learned some stuff.
I'm surprised you made it off the Greyhound bus without relapsing.
Yeah, I made it back. And then soon next day I got back in my old stomping grounds, though. It was, I wanted to shoot dope again, dude. I wasn't even trying to hide it. And that was a crazy next couple. Now, Grant, I've never been arrested. I've never been in any trouble. I've had a couple run-ins with the law.
To this day?
No. Okay. I'm about to get into that. So. I wish. Yeah. But up to this point,
got you.
I've had some slaps on the wrist. Yeah. I've had some people call my father because they busted me with pot, all this stuff. And, I
always knew I had charges before, or my dad always knew I had charges before I did. And me and my dad wouldn't really talk once I was like strung out. But I always knew that if dad was calling my phone, I better be running. Right. Because they're coming for me.
Oh, I know, man. And it was a scary thing. I love my dad. I told him this the other day. I said, if it wasn't for you, yes, there was times he enabled me. Yes, there's times he saved me and got me out of some trouble and stuff. But looking at everything as a whole and seeing a lot of other people that didn't have the type of support that I had in the family that I had, I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for my dad. I know that 1,000%. But yeah, like I said, up to this point, I've never had any trouble really with the law or anything like that. So I come back from this treatment center in 2010, and then I get really bad off. This time, pretty much right back to the level that I was at, if not worse. I'm going to I found a new doctor. There's a lot of stuff that I'm doing. I'm just running the roads all day. I'm not really working. And I end up burning bridges up here. I was looking at probably being homeless. Family didn't want me around. I actually had got my prescription and pain pills and sold like half of them because I had a buddy in Louisiana that I was in treatment with that was still sober. And he said, if you'll come up, man, if you'll come down here, I'll help you, and I'll help you get in a place. So I used that money back on the Greyhound bus back to Louisiana, and I made it there, and I ended up staying clean for another 6 months and ended up relapsing in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that's when I was introduced to heroin.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't a thing up here, really.
Yeah.
You were talking about that the other day. Yeah, I'll throw in this little story here of Louisiana. So my buddy's like, yeah, just come down here. And I trusted this other addict with money.
You never say that in the same sentence. I trusted this other addict.
But he was like, and then he actually had to go back to work that day that he picked me up from the bus station. He had another addict take me to the hospital in Louisiana, and they took me into detox. That's something that Louisiana does that Tennessee doesn't really do. Like here, you got to go through all this stuff. You got to tell them you're going to jump out in front of a car or something, and they still don't want to keep you up here. But down there, if you say, hey, I'm shooting heroin, they immediately looked at like you're threatening your life, and they'll immediately put you on a hold. So that's what they did. They kept me a couple weeks, and then I ended up going to this treatment center. And I stayed clean. I went to Oxford House down there, and I'd got a job serving tables at a P.F. Chang's. And then I ended up just getting a wild hair, 5 months clean, decided to get some heroin with a guy that I was in treatment with that had relapsed. And this was a little bit different because it was Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We were going to the hood, some places, and I was a long ways from home. It was a little different than up here. Yeah. From the pillbillies that I used to deal with in Sevier County and stuff like that. But that was a miserable feeling for the next week. I'm living in this Oxford house, and then all of a sudden they randomly drug test all of us, but I'm pretty sure they knew I was using, and that's why they randomly drug tested everyone. So I didn't even take the test. I just packed my stuff and went out. But here I am in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I called another guy I knew that was getting messed up, and I said, hey, they kicked me out. I don't want my family to know back home. I don't want to depress them and stress them out. He said, come over here, and he was living in an apartment in a not-so-great area, and I got there, and there was like 8 heroin addicts all living there. Some that were out of treatment, and then some other just traveling kids, homeless people, homeless girls. A lot going on in this apartment. And I became homeless and a heroin addict for the next 4 or 5 weeks. In the middle of the summer in Louisiana, at this point, family knows, they know. They're like, what's going on? I'm trying to play it off like I'm clean the whole time. Then it's like, wire me money. I need this. I need that. And my car that I had broke down, and I could not get it fixed. And I ended up selling it. I had the title and everything for scrap, and I went and bought a gram of heroin and a bus ticket back to Tennessee. So I'm back on the Greyhound bus. Just a crazy story. I come back, And I say to this day, like, if I would have been in Louisiana still, I think I would be dead. Glad I come back when I did. But that kind of led me up to 2012. All this is kind of crammed in a short area. Back at the doctor, I've got a girlfriend that we're both just doing tons of pills and stuff like that. I was trying to find heroin here, but there wasn't any at the time. And I remember we had drove to Nashville to my doctor that I had. He had come from Florida when they shut everything down there.
Because that was what
these
happened.
Nashville spots.
Florida shut down. Michigan opened up. Then when they shut Michigan down, they started bringing the heroin down. I mean, it's kind of what happened. Those doctors went up there, and then it just transferred to heroin, dude. And so that was what, like 2011 or so when that started really showing up.
It was around the same time. 2011, 2012, and that led me up to November of 2012. And I've actually never talked about this publicly, but in 2012, and like I said, I knew I was eventually going to be arrested because of the life that I was living. But I remember me and this girl woke up. It was actually November of 2012. The girlfriend I had at the time, we were out. We were dope sick. We called our normal people, hey, can you throw us this? Can you front us this? Nobody would mess with us. Now, granted, I've taken like 40 or 50 1 milligram Klonopins over the last few days, but I'm dope sick for opiates, but I'm messed up out of my mind on benzos, and I don't realize how messed up I am at the time on benzos. And I remember me and this girl are sitting there, and we have no way to find anything, no money. And I was like, hey, I know this little drugstore that my sister used to get her medicine from. I was like, it's on a back road. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's actually in Granger County. And I said, do you want to rob a pharmacy?
Just point blank.
Just point blank.
Yeah. Because what else do you do? How do you ease into that? You just, I mean.
And she looked at me and she's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, let's do it. And I said, I know this place. Never had really even been in there or anything. I don't know how I even thought of this, but I was like, there's only 2 cops, like, really in this area. So I had this plan. I had a distant relative that also lived pretty close by there, and that was my whole plan. It's like, we call her up. She smoked. So, hey, you want to meet my girl? We'll smoke, whatever. And she's, oh, yeah, you're in the area. Okay. But my whole plan was to try to get some pills out of this pharmacy and then hide there. And then the cops would pass by, and then we would be free.
Yeah.
That was the whole plan. I got duct tape for the license plate. That way no one could get the license plate. And I remember we pulled up, and I had this girl back in the spot with the car and drive with her foot on the brake, and I didn't know what to expect. But I walked in this pharmacy with my hoodie on, my hat tucked low, and these 2 ladies were there behind the counter. There was several people waiting on their medicine. I mean, it was like Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just, when you're dope sick, and no matter what time it is. So I walked up in there, and the lady was like, I had a piece of paper from my car because I was like, I'm going to play it off like this is the prescription or what, to get their attention. She's like, can I help you? And I was like, yes. I was like, she kind of like come down to the side, and I didn't want everyone in the store to hear me because I didn't need anyone being a hero, but I have a gun. I was like, I need all your oxycodone 30 milligrams and your Dilaudid 8 milligrams. Because I knew those would be out on the shelf, and I have people that are like, why didn't you ask for this, and that? I'm like, dude.
Let me get all the field schedule too on the shelf, please.
I'm like, these weren't locked up. I knew it. And she's like, are you being serious right now? And I said, I have a fucking gun. I'm going to blow your goddamn brains out. And that's what I said. I'm not proud of that. That probably caused some trauma. I didn't have a gun. But the lady cooperated. She got me a bag, and she got me 500 Roxys, 100 Dilaudids, put them in a bag, and I left. And I went and got in the car, and I was like, go, go, go. And me and this girl take off going down the road, down this 2-lane road. we end up pulling up to the relative's house, which obviously she don't know what we've done. You park behind it, and it's a trailer. We almost wrecked pulling in, in the road. And these neighbors down the road had come out of this greenhouse, and I was like, they're like, what was that? And I'm like, oh, I think someone up the road must have wrecked. I mean, adrenaline's pumped. And I'm strung out on Clozapine too, so I'm like not in my right mind.
Right.
We go inside my aunt's house. You can hear cops going down this 2-lane road.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt's like, what is going on? She didn't hear the cops even, but she was like, you guys something's up. Like, going straight to the bathroom. I'm asking her if she's got sandwich bags. I'm trying to put she don't see all this. She's like, I don't know what you guys are into, but you got to go. And I was like, crap, this was my whole plan. This was what I was thinking, was hiding out here. So we left and we took a right. I guess all the cops were at the pharmacy. And
all 2 of them.
Yeah, well, they sent more than that after I told them I had a gun. Apparently, I found out now that they were getting a SWAT team together because I had a gun. But, long story short, we drove down this back road, and a little bit later, my mom calls me and says, this is hours later, there's some detectives looking for you. And I'm like, that's weird. She's like, yeah, they won't tell me why. And I'm like, well, I think I know what it's over, but I was like, I'll take care of all that. Don't worry about that. And I looked at the girl that I was with, and I don't drop her name because she never got in trouble for any of this. I never added on her. But we basically, I said, we can't go home, we got to go. So we actually drove to Nashville. I remember she had fallen asleep, and I threw her cell phone, my cell phones out the window. And I'm still like, how do they know that it was me? Because I've never been in any trouble. And I didn't know 100% that's what it was for, but I was like, has to be. And we left the car in Nashville and got on a bus, and we went to Louisiana. I know, crazy. Well, 10 days down there, man, and we ran out of literally everything. And we don't have a car. Like, I knew a couple people down there, but that was it. So we decided it was time to go back home.
Isn't it crazy how fast you can play? It's never enough.
There's fast.
You would never have enough pills.
No.
I mean, that's what they say, if that one's too many, 1,000's never enough. I mean, this is a serious thing, man. Because we did a similar thing.
It's crazy.
Dude. Like, we robbed a dealership and stole a car and a safe. And, bro, within 3 days, I'm going to rehab. Like, I'm checking myself into Cornerstone. First of all, I knew if I was there that detectives couldn't come question me because they couldn't tell them I was even there unless they just saw me. So I was, like, trying to hide out and stuff. But, like, also the fact that we blew through that much dope, man. Like, that morning, this was 3 days later, and I was worried to death that the police were coming. Like, I was like, there's no way we're getting away with this.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, I woke up, like, because we were going to rob a pharmacy. And me and the guy that I was with, he had already done it once, had already been to prison for it. And he's like, I know what not to do. And he's like, you don't tell anybody to get down because that's kidnapping. You don't tell me who had a gun because it's aggravated. And all field schedule 2 on the shelf. Like, he knew all this stuff to do. Yeah. And we were going to rob the Walgreens at Clinton Highway and Merchants, which is a terrible idea.
Terrible spot.
But, with where we were at and what we were doing, like, we just didn't give it. And it's crazy how you can get there when you're in addiction, that, like, consequences do not matter.
They don't.
And I remember, like, so we had all these pills and stuff that we had gotten, and then we blow through all of it. And then I woke up, so that night, once we ran out of dope, we were sitting there and we were like, pharmacy's logically the next thing that we've got to do at this point.
Right.
And so we come up with this whole plan. We had a plan A and a plan B, and plan C is when it gets really good. So, like, plan A is like everything works out well. We go in here, we do this, and we make it out. And then plan B, we'll try like hell to get away. If not, plan C, as long as I can get the pills, I'll eat the pills. And we'll just check out and this will be over with. Like, that was logical thinking for me at that point. And I was totally at peace with that, man. I don't know, because you get to a spot, man, where you're so tired. Like, man, it's just, you're so tired and there's no hope and everything else. And consequences don't matter. You're a different person. Like, you've lost your soul, like, at that point, man. And I just remember I woke up that next morning and I was dope sick. And I had like this slight amount of clarity. And I remember calling Cornerstone and was like, I'm packing a bag right now and I'm heading up there. And she was like, well, hold on a second. And she pulled up my file and she's like, you owe us $27,000 from the last time you were here.
My God.
I said, look, I'm packing a bag and I'm coming up there right now. And if you turn me down, then tomorrow it's on you. I will be on the front page. Like, insurance only paid for me to do like a 3 or 4 day detox.
Sure, because you owed them from last time.
Yeah, something like that. And then plus the insurance, for whatever reason, like, they wouldn't cover residential unless you relapse while you were in treatment, which I played that card at one point just to have a place to stay. So, but anyway, but 3 days after getting to Cornerstone, they moved me to SLF, the halfway house. And so it's about 2 more days after that, I'm in this halfway house, and it was in these apartments. I don't know if you remember the SLF apartments at Cornerstone?
Yeah.
And, but anyway, so, you know, we had neighbors that weren't addicts. You know, the houses were just spread out in this apartment complex. And so, like, my neighbors next door definitely were not in recovery, but probably should have been. But I remember I was in a cul-de-sac, and I remember I had looked outside, and there was a Maryville cop sitting right in front of my apartment. And I was like, oh, shit, like, this is it. And so, coincidentally, like, 5 minutes later, I get a phone call from the Clayton building, and they're like, hey, we need you to come up here and sign a release for your attorney. And because I was out on pretrial. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And so I hung up the phone, and about 5-10 minutes later, they called me back. They was like, when you coming up here? And I was like, yep, on my way. A few more minutes later, they called again. They said, you know, well, we're just going to send somebody down there to pick you up and bring you up here. And I was like, okay, cool. So I remember I looked out front, and that cop was gone. And I was like, all right. So I went up, dude, I was on the back balcony, and I was ready to jump and run. And I mean, it was a high balcony. I was like, I'm about to cut out of here, right? And so a dude pulls up in a Mustang, and I go down there and I get in his car, and we're driving. He's driving me over to the Clayton building, and we're turning on the Alco Highway, and I look at him dead serious. I said, bro, if there's a cop, if there's an undercover, if there's a Crown Vic in the parking lot, I'm jumping out of this car on Alcoa Highway. You will not catch me. I said, just tell me now. Is there somebody up there? He's like, no, dude. I was like, I'm telling you. So we pull in up there, and it was just coincidence, dude. They were just wanting a release for my attorney. And I mean, it was... But, dude, nervous wreck, statute ran up on that one, so we're good now. That's been plenty of years. But it was a crazy time in life, and I was nervous wreck, dude.
Yeah, it was like, you know, the day I robbed the pharmacy, as much as I was out of my head, I said my really only main goal at being dope sick that day was to get high.
Yeah.
I actually thought there was a very good chance. I knew I would get busted, but I thought there was a very good chance it would happen that day. And all I cared about was hoping I could at least get into the bottle enough to get high before they locked me up. And ironically enough, when we come back from the Greyhound bus, we were out of everything. And I went to my mom's, and she was always my biggest, you know, supporter. But like I said, detectives have been looking for me. So she probably told them when I come back. I'm not for sure, you know, because they had said, like, hey, let us know if you see them, top thing. And I went to her house, and I knew it was kind of over that night. And the next morning, she woke me up, and I was dope sick. And 3 detectives came and picked me up, and they took me in, and they charged me with robbery, which that was a blessing in disguise at the time. Because, like you said, you know, aggravated versus armed. And it very well could have been and should have been. But they could tell that I didn't have a gun on camera. And it possibly helped, you know, just knowing people knew Dad was and stuff. Even though he was retired, they knew who my father was. And they're like, well, we have him on video, you know, wearing the same shoes. I got rid of everything, clothes, hoodie, all that stuff, but the shoes is actually what got me. I kept thinking they don't know who I am. And I was convinced for 10 days on the run that maybe they weren't looking for me because there wasn't a warrant for me. I was a person of interest. But they had ended up showing up to that relative's house. You know, like I said, some people thought they heard a car almost wreck. And I guess once they put two and two together that there had been a robbery, they were getting a SWAT team together. So I actually got out there in time. They surrounded it. They figured out who it was. And then they looked for me until I got back in town. And so that was, I was in jail for 5 months. I thought I was going to be in there a lot longer than that, but I'm getting high the whole time I'm in jail. There's a lot of drugs in the jail I was at.
Which jail was it?
I was in Granger County.
So was the dude that was here before, and it was the same thing that he said.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. This is such a small world.
It is a small world. I was in Granger County. There was a lot of guards that ended up getting indicted later, and some people escaped. All this crazy stuff. But I remember telling Dad and my lawyer, I was like, I just need to go treatment again. You know, that's what it is. I'm ready. I'm getting high in jail. I had my dad call every state-funded treatment center. They furloughed me out to go to a treatment center in Kingsport. There was a state-funded place.
Community corrections.
No, it was, what's it called, CCS or what? Yeah. So I go there, and I end up getting clean, man. And the day that I got out, they took me to court, and, you know, Judge Sloan, God rest his soul, the judge that just recently passed away. He was a drug court judge. He accepted me into drug court, so I wouldn't have to go back to jail that day. But I took a plea, and it was a deferral plea to where I could get this violent charge off my record if I completed everything. So I had to do 3 years drug court, 3 years state probation. And the drug court stuff was very intense, you know, for a year straight, 3 drug tests a week, classes, court every 2 weeks. And I did it for 3 years, and I stayed clean the whole time. Like, probation is extremely easy if you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I've talked about that before, dude, because the first time that I went to probation, everybody was like, you can't do probation. Just flatten your time. Just flatten your time. And then I remember sitting there, and then they handed me this piece of paper with all the rules and guidelines of probation. It was like, be a civilized human being, work a job, pay your bills, don't rob people, don't put a needle in your arm. Like, just be a civilized, productive member of society. Oh, yeah, you can't do that.
Right. But, you know, I'm coming up on 6 years since the last time that I used, and that was a crazy story in itself, but you're thinking, you know, you got out of jail, you were still using in 2013, and that was something I was always very proud of, too, is that through drug court, I'd actually met my kid's mom, and we were expecting, my son actually was born while I was in drug court. You know, and I was like, man, my kids have never seen me high or, you know, anything. And it was a really cool thing. And I just kind of thought that I had it, one of those things. And in 2016, so I had, you know, 3.5 years clean. I relapsed. My mother had moved up here, and I was already dabbling with stuff and kind of hiding it. I convinced Mom to give me a bunch of her Xanaxes that she didn't take very much, that she was prescribed. And, you know, it's horrible to think, but that's how our minds work. And she, not being in the right state of mind that she was in, she had a couple strokes and stuff like that. She's like, are you sure you can take them right? Because I know you've got anxiety. Oh, yeah, Mom, I can take them right. And that ended up, and at the time, my wife at the time, we're expecting our daughter Paxton. My son's like 2, and here I am. I've taken everything to an extreme again, and I've got messed up really bad on benzos and pain pills and other stuff until we end up just separating, you know, because she couldn't handle, obviously, my drug use while she was pregnant. So I ended up moving back. I moved in with my mom for the time. I've got my dad trying to talk me into going to treatment. Again, I'm bad off. As worse as I was before, and this time I'm buying heroin after getting kicked out from the hood in Knoxville. Never had any real close scares at this point, really, like ODing and stuff like that. but I'm just as bad. Like I'm living a different life. It's like straight. I'm a junkie, and I've relapsed, and I have kids, and it was just a whole mess in itself. And what brought me to getting clean. And so this is 2017. I'm in treatment again. Dad taught me to go, and I'm living at my mom's, and she's not been in good health, by the way. And my daughter is supposed to be born in April, and this is March. I go to treatment. I'm there for 14 days. I'm feeling good. I'm really wanting to get clean because I had almost 4 years clean. So I know what I need to do. I'm grateful to be there. And then I get a phone call that my mom is in the hospital and may not make it. She had been in the hospital for a few days with a procedure, and things took a turn for the worse when she was supposed to be getting out. So I told my dad, you're going to have to come pick me up. I left AMA from rehab to go take my mom off life support. So that was in 2017, St. Patrick's Day. And it is what it is. Dad picked me up. I was in Chattanooga. We came back, and I saw my mom in a hospital bed. She's hooked up to all these, tubes, machines, even her skin color's like, a different color. Like, you can just tell it doesn't look like the real person. And they're like, her blood pressure bottomed out. So I had to make the decision to take her, off life support. And I always say my daughter, Paxton, is my angel because, my mom died March 17th and my daughter was born in April. Yeah. She didn't get to meet my mom, but just seeing, the baby come into the world right after burying my mom I saw a lot of my mom in my daughter, and it was just such an amazing feeling. And me and my kid's mom, we tried to work stuff out. Like, I'm doing good. I'm straightened up. 2017, I'm trying to do like maintenance stuff. Like, I'm not shooting up, but hiding a lot of stuff from a lot of people. And, I'm selling cars, but I'm not doing very good because I'm using, and like, I just really don't have any purpose. Like, I feel like still, I don't want to get clean again. I've lost my family. And then my dad ends up finding out that I'm like using again. I mean, this time was the worst addiction. I'm a heroin addict. I'm a crack addict, Xanax addict. And I was going the hood. I was dealing with some rough people. There was a couple of times I met my dude to get some and did a shot. I remember at Target on Kingston Pike off downtown West. I met him, I did a shot, and I woke up like 4 hours later with my car still running. And it's like, holy crap, this is bad. And Dad's like, you need to get clean again, so I had made up my mind to go back to the Mend House. I'd went there, and they had tried to, Rico was like, come on, you got to get back over. You got to get cleaned up. It'd been like 1 year since I'd been over there. And he's like, you keep doing this, because there was countless detoxes, treatments along this way. And
Rico was my counselor at Cornerstone.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But I remember, I'm coming today, Rico, I'm coming. And I had my suitcase out, and I'm at my dad's house. I'm like, I'll go later. And I decided to go get some heroin. And I went and got some needles because at the time I was really trying not to do it. But that's what I wanted. I knew I'm about to get clean again. And I was at the Walmart on Clinton Highway, and I did a little bit to see how strong it was. I start driving, and I fell out driving. I nodded off. I don't remember much of anything. I'm pulling up to Merchants, and I remember vaguely in a dream, like I'm going this, like turning my car back. I went into the center median area, hit this little concrete thing, and then ran into a car at the red light. And debris flying up, but I don't remember any of this except that one little, looking back on it. But next thing I know, I'm nodded off in the shoulder with my foot on the brake, and cops are at the window trying to wake me up.
I've been in a similar situation.
And I know to this day, the $40 worth of dope I had left would have killed me because I didn't do much. And it was straight fentanyl, which I didn't know.
I would have never survived that.
I didn't do I did enough to see how strong it was, and I was good, whatever. But I completely fell out driving. Ended up getting arrested for a DUI and simple possession of heroin and a couple other things. And that's the last time that I ever used, man. It scared me so much to the fact that, it's like I was fine. I put the needle up. I start driving. I'm good. I'm not going for it. And then I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did I not hit somebody? How did I not kill someone else? But the fact that these cops woke me up, and I'm like, I don't know if I would have made it, through that day. So I went and got clean again at Rico's, and I've ran with it ever since. I'm coming up on 6 years. And even like different times come up, like I've got a lot of physical problems, back problems, like all this stuff, but I'm terrified of narcotics, man.
Dude, it's always been a huge fear of mine is like, what if I was to get so hurt that like I kind of needed it? And like, would I be able to say no? Like I have had a back injury since I've been sober, and I was able to walk in and say, I don't need any pain pills. And he was like, oh, because I was just going to prescribe you some hydros. And I was like, really? Like, without asking questions, you're just going to...
They don't care, really. The doctors don't, even if you tell them. They still don't get it.
And that's what's crazy. They don't get it, man. And they still see addiction as a choice. And, at the end of the day, yes, there are choices that are made. But addiction is an obsessive compulsion that you can't. It is OCD. I'm so convinced that OCD plays a massive factor in addiction. Because for me, at least an addict by nature, because that's kind of what I feel like I am. Like I can get addicted to anything. Yeah. And so for me, it's an obsessive compulsion. So for me, I almost wonder, like, am I an addict or am I like OCD? And like this is what it latches to. I don't know. It's just questions I have to ask myself. You know what I mean? So I think it's plausible. Same way.
I'm the exact same way because now, like, everyone's recovery is different. I don't do so much the meetings and stuff like that anymore because I do, for one thing, I think some things have changed. And I think other people are more open to other people's way of recovery. But the main thing, you got to have a spiritual connection.
100%.
If you don't have some type of spiritual connection or you use something else as a higher power or something like that, it's not probably going to end well. And I know for me, like, our minds are very, very similar. I've got to learn how to put my obsessive thinking towards stuff that's good for me or whatever else, because I can get obsessed and addicted. And I go through different phases where I'm like, all for this or all that. It's so easy to get addicted to whatever. But the main thing that's helped me all this time and staying clean is I've always tried to show gratitude. Yeah. I've always tried to wake up and be grateful that I have an opportunity to wake up. Like we were talking about the other day, there's been so many people die that have kids and everything else. And I wonder why I was chose to survive the way that I did versus someone else. So I'm still trying to find my purpose in a sense, but I was taught a long time ago, the only way you can keep what you have is by giving it away.
I love it, dude.
And I feel like I'm that type of guy that even when I was in treatment and stuff, feeling like I didn't fit in because I felt like I was worse than everyone else. Yeah. I felt like...
And that's a crazy thing when you consider being around a bunch of addicts and you're like, I'm worse than anybody else.
They couldn't relate to some of the things that I was talking about and the amounts and stuff like... Not that all that matters, but my own thinking would let me look at the differences rather than the similarities because my mind, that's just how it works. But... the thing that's helped me more than anything is I try to just do the next right thing when nobody's looking. Yeah. That conscience, that you get like, oh, that's right or that's wrong. I try not to be a negative person. I have my moments, I have my times, and I try not to be an angry person. I'm one of the most laid back. It takes a lot to get me upset. I've always been that way. Yeah. But,
you seem very chill.
Yeah, I'm chill. Even in my addiction, I screwed a lot of people over in my addiction, but I was still a nice
still
guy.
Pretty chill? Like
my anxiety is not
okay
chill.
So you get totally different when your anxiety.
yes and no. My anxiety is, God, it's hard to explain, man.
Yeah.
I'm anxious about a lot. For
See,
speaking in front of people, if I feel like everyone's looking at me like this is way out of my comfort zone, yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't really struggle with anxiety. So, I mean, I get the concept. I understand. And obviously, everybody has moments where they feel anxious. But I guess anxiety is just not something that I continuously struggle with. But yeah, my wife definitely does for sure. I know plenty of people that definitely do. And so it's just not one of my personal struggles, but I know a ton of people that definitely struggle with that. So, but I also know people that, like, even though they struggle with anxiety, like, they still stay, I don't know, kind of even keeled. Like, I don't know if they just internalize all their anxiety somehow, which has got to be hard. How do you internalize anxiety? That's a tough thing.
I've had it my whole entire life, man. Anxiety is a tough one, but even now with my doctor now, like, she knows my history. So, she's not going to put me on anything habit forming.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust myself, and I'm not totally against. My thoughts on medicine are different now than they were even a few years ago about certain things, and you've got to ask for help if there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Like, I've had to tweak my mental health stuff. I never thought that I had depression. These last couple years, I'm actually going through a divorce right now. And, I'm losing a wife and her kids that we tried to force things to work for 2 straight years. And it's like your mental health has to be number one. Without you both having each other's mental health in check and therapy, and it can be a design for disaster if not. So these last 2 years have been tough, but I am doing the things I need to do when it comes to asking the doctors for help or whatever, and then using my story to try to help other people, because just the group you started, on Facebook, seeing a guy reach out last night and kind of share. If you wouldn't have made that group a few days ago, that guy probably would have never shared on there. And I don't know. You'll have to go back and read this one from last night.
I haven't, and I haven't had a chance to this morning. And like, because yesterday I tried to just spend some really intentional time with the family and stuff. And so I tried, like, I got on there and made a quick post. And then I just tried to, I don't know, because I want people to see also that it is okay, even if you have a platform, even if you have stuff, you still have to step away from that and take care of family.
Absolutely, man.
Because I feel one thing I have to be in this group is not only there to help support people and to help connect people, but I have to be an example as well. And so I want to show an example that you have to step away from things and you have to take time for. Because, dude, I spent so much time not putting the family first. Even in sobriety, like, I've become a workaholic. It became my addiction. Photography became an addiction for me.
Right.
And, it was to my detriment a lot, and then at the end of my marriage, I had taken on so much work to just cope with things like it was my drug.
You want to fill it with something else.
Yeah, it was definitely filling a void for me. But to the point where I was working around the clock, not spending any family time at all. And almost just blind to it. Like, you're so wrapped up in it. And the addict mind, man, sometimes we don't. That's why my wife now is so good for me, because she can keep me grounded. Like, if I start spiraling out, I can see it in her face.
You need that support, man, for sure. It's a game changer.
Dude, it is everything, man. It is everything. I didn't realize how much I needed that, I guess.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know, none of this would be possible without that support system. And so, yeah, dude, it's just such an amazing
I love
thing.
what you're doing, though, man. And I really appreciate you having me out, because, like I said, this is out of my comfort zone, but I've been wanting to, like I said, possibly start my own show. There's a lot of stuff that I had to get rid of, a few things in my life before I could really just say, let's just do it. Yeah. You don't have to have a certain area to just start. So I love what you're doing, man. I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah, dude.
For sure.
This is awesome. And see, I would have never known your story was that wild, dude. And that's the thing. That's why we have to be sitting down and talking to each other, man, because... yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. And if anyone needs a car too, reach out. You can find me with Jesse's Got Your Ride. or Jeeps with Jesse. Hashtag Jesse's got your eye, Jesse's got your Jeep.
Yeah.
Or on Facebook, man.
For
I'm going
sure.
to be doing a lot of stuff coming up this next year as
dude.
well.
For sure, man. I'm actually going to be probably hollering at you here soon. Me and my wife were talking about it the other night.
I got you,
because
dude.
I got to make some stuff happen, and we probably need some credit assistance. And you figure,
I got you.
I'm not far off, but
I'm
anyway.
an expert in that.
Oh, I
real.
know. That's why I said I was going to call you.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, hey, I love you all. Thank you so much for stopping by, gentlemen. Find some people. If you don't have people, make a group of people. I want to say this real quick. This is something that I've realized about this group in the last few days, because I think we were talking when we first started about like I've never really felt like I fit in anywhere, never felt like I really belonged anywhere, and I've always tried to. Anywhere I was at, military, jail, even wherever I was at, I've always wanted to fit in, and I've always felt so awkward, and I don't fit in, and it's just like, with this group and the guys that are now reaching out to me and stuff, and with all the experience and stuff that God has allowed me to go through in my life, it's like maybe I was never meant to find a group. Maybe I was meant to like bring some people together. You know what I mean? And so
let's do it.
Yeah, dude. And so, gentlemen, if you're out there, we love for you to be a part of this group, but I want to strongly encourage you, start your own group, man. Start building a community of other men that you can encourage and help and stay in contact with, because we all need each other. Like men, we need each other. And so anyway, there is no weakness in asking for help. I love you all.
We're all in this together.
That's it. I love you all so much, and tell your people that you love them. This is Man to Mike. I'm Zach.